Okay. Okay, this is what you're going to look at. These are our agendas for the day. I hope I'm audible upon you. Okay. So we begin with what the definitions of Hotwire. Okay, as I had said, Hotwire is an acronym. In full, Hotwire stands for HTML over the wire. Okay, Hotwire is an alternative approach to building modern web application without using much JavaScript by sending HTML instead of JSON over the wire. As I was explaining before, what Hotwire tries to achieve is instead of passing JSON responses, we send our responses as HTML, therefore achieving some faster page reload, dynamic web functionalities, and whatnot. Hotwire is the default front-end framework shipped with Rails 7. So as from Rails 7, Hotwire comes baked into Rails version 7, and it is what is used for the front-end side. In the latter versions of Rails, some systems were built with a Rails backend and maybe React front-end Vue. We are moving away from that now, from Rails 7 now, moving onward. We don't need that. Maybe the React front-end for the interactivity. Hotwire covers all of this. So Hotwire is composed of these three elements. We have the turbo, stimulus, and strada. So we are going to look at each in detail. Turbo. Turbo is the successor of turbo links. In the previous version of Rails, maybe Rails 6, we had turbo links. They were responsible for what I was talking about. You don't need to do the full page reload. Now this is what was replaced now in version 7 of Rails by Turbo now. It is the successor of Turbo links in the previous version of Rails. Its main purpose is to make the web page navigation faster by preserving the JavaScript rendering context. What this means is that when you say it makes web page navigation faster by preserving the JavaScript context, is meaning that you don't have, not everything changes in a page refresh or reload. So that we have that context. And what Turbo does is you update what has changed. That is what Turbo does in short. Okay, Turbo provides frames, streams, and active action cable interactions. So under Turbo, we are going to look at Turbo frames and how to use them. Next, after Turbo frames, we look at Turbo streams, and then finally, we look at how we can integrate Turbo streams with action cable. Okay, the second element that comes baked in Hotwire is Stimulus. Stimulus is a JavaScript library that seeks to do what Turbo cannot do. Maybe an example can be maybe when you want to toggle with the visibility of maybe something on the page, maybe an infinite scroll where when you reach at the end of the page, more data maybe loads. That is what Stimulus does. Stimulus does what Turbo maybe cannot be able to achieve. That's why we have Stimulus in the package of Hotwire. Okay, the other point is you should also note that Hotwire does not change how Stimulus works. Stimulus works independent of Hotwire, as in it's a JS library. It works independent of Turbo, as in Turbo does not influence how Stimulus works. You should also note that. Stimulus is it's interesting to work with Stimulus. You can achieve from what Turbo offers, you can achieve more interactivity from adding Stimulus, controllers, and whatnot. So the last component of Hotwire is Strada. Strada has not yet premiered, so there is not much we can talk about Strada yet. Maybe in the future times we will come back to discuss Strada. Okay, now let's talk about Turbo frames. Under now Turbo, we have frames, streams, and now the last part, how we integrate the Turbo streams with action cable. Now Turbo frames, okay, a frame, what is a frame? Like a picture. You see a picture is inside a frame. So what a frame, Turbo frame does, you wrap parts of a page into frames, so you can have multiple frames on a page. What this helps you achieve is that you can reload frames instead of reloading the whole page. Only data in a certain frame changes instead of everything on the page changing. Okay, Turbo frames decomposes the page into independent context. Now frames, you can have multiple frames on a page and have each frame is independent of the other frame. Okay, you can change one frame and the other frame remains as is. Okay, Turbo frame is a custom HTML element and this is the what you will see as the HTML element that carries the Turbo frame. Okay. Within a Turbo frame, any link or form submission will by default capture the server's response. Look for a Turbo frame with the same ID and redraw the frame with the response. Okay, how Turbo works? Turbo works by the sending side and the receiving side agreeing on names. How this works is, okay, the sending side, the name is set by an ID and the receiving side has the same ID such that when the data is sent, the request is sent and we have a response, we know where to put our response. The Turbo works by the sending side and the receiving side agreeing on names. So, this is what I'm explaining when I say within a Turbo frame, any link or form submission will by default capture the server's response. Look for a Turbo frame with the same ID and redraw the frame with the response. So when a frame changes, we send a request and we have a response, only that frame will change. Remember that the Turbo works by the sending side and the receiving side agreeing on names. We have the Turbo frame tag helper method. It is a helper method that you get from the Turbo Rails gem. It's a helper method added by the Turbo Rails gem and is available anywhere in the views. So this is what is majorly used in the view to now create the frames. Okay. Here is an example of a frame. How now we write the frame. You can see the Turbo frame tag helper method. We have a to-do instance variable. This is the now view. The comment up there says this is the show page of the to-dos views. Okay. So we have two views here. We have the show page and we have the edit page. And inside the show page, we have the link to edit this to-do. Okay, a Turbo frame is wrapped in a do end block, and inside the do end block, now that is where we manipulate what we want. In this case, what we want to do, remember we talked about Turbo frames wrapping links and form submissions. Okay, I don't know if you can remember in a previous slide. So in this case, what we want to do, we want to manipulate such that we want now we have a frame in the show page. Now we have another frame in the edit page. Notice that the two frames have the same instance variable. That is what we mean by saying the Turbo works by the sending side and the receiving side agreeing on names. Okay, we have the to-do instance variable, which is a specific object, to-do object. And now in the edit view, we have the same instance variable, a specific to-do object that we want to edit. So what this means is that when we click the edit to the link to edit this to-do, this object now, the specific object, what will happen is the frame on the show page will get replaced by what we have in the edit page. It will not do a redirect as normally things are or things were before. What happens is when you click the link to edit this to do, what you will see next after the link is clicked, you will see now maybe the form the edit form pre-populated with the objects attributes. I don't know if we are on the same page. Okay. So the sending side and the receiving side have the same name. That's why when you click this, when you click on that edit, you will see this frame. Okay. The other one, the edit one. Okay, this is just an explanation. When the user clicks the edit, this to-do link as direct. A direct response will be replaced by the one in the edit page automatically. Okay, we go into turbo streams. Now we've talked about turbo frames and how we wrap the page into frames. So what we have done here previously, you can have as many frames as possible on a page. Anywhere you have a form submission, anywhere you have a link, and each frame will work independent of the other frame. Okay. Okay, let's move on to turbo streams. Turbo stream is another part of turbo. And what turbo streams helps us to achieve, turbo streams, they have actions. Okay, let me read through. A turbo stream is a custom HTML turbo stream element which has two attributes, namely the action attribute and the target attribute. So we have an action. The action is maybe the method which is tied to the stream, and a target, a target is maybe where do you want to put the response. In the case of the turbo frame, we had the ID. Okay, something I forgot to mention in the turbo frame, you can use an instance variable, you can use a string as the name of the frame, you can use an active record object or model as the name of the frame. Anything goes as long as the sending side and the receiving side agree on names. That is, they have the same name. Okay. The action attribute specifies the server-side action that generates the content, while the target attribute specifies the ID of the element to update with the content. So, TurboStream has those two elements, the action and the attribute. We are going to see how it works in later slides. Okay, TurboStreams comes with actions. So there are 7 actions performed by TurboStreams. Namely, as listed, we have after, append, before, and so on. So this is how a turbo stream looks. Now, when it is generated, we have said a turbo stream has 2 elements: the action element and the target element. Now, if we look at the first one, we have, and then inside the turbo stream element, we have a child element of template. The child element of template directs where our information goes, our data goes. That is the function of the child element, the child template element. So in the first case, we have turbo stream action append. As we've seen before, append was among our 7 actions. The target messages is telling the stream, this is what we are targeting, as in this is the ID we want to put this template, this information. And then we have the child template, HTML tag template, and then inside the template we have a div of ID message 1, and then the line inside there explains what the stream is all about. This div will be appended to the element with the DOM ID messages. So of importance to us is the action, the action that you are taking, because if you are to look further, an action like prepend works different from prepend. Append maybe adds to the beginning of to the end of a list, and the prepend maybe adds to the beginning of a list. Targets indicates like where does our data go, where do we put the content. Yeah, as indicated below, we have another one, action prepend target messages to the same div. This div will prepend to the element with the DOM ID, not the div necessary, the DOM ID messages. If you've done JavaScript, you know about how the DOM works and such stuff. So that is what we are using here. because we are working with now the elements that have been generated once we have sent our turbo stream. Okay, the key to turbo stream is the ability to reuse your existing server-side template to perform live and partial page changes. Okay, what this means is you will use one. You will need one partial. Maybe when you render the first message, and when you render the second, the third, the fourth, you will not need another maybe view. You will reuse that partial for successive re-rendering of maybe the page refresh or adding new data. The HTML template used to re-render each message on the first page load is the same template that will be used to add new messages to the list dynamically later. This is as the essence of HTML over the wire, Hotwire. You don't need to serialize the new messages as JSON. It is just standard server-side code reused. You will reuse the template used for the first message, the second, moving forward. Okay, let's now see how we generate now what we had seen, the turbo stream element on the HTML. This is how it comes about. Okay, we have a controller here. It's a messages controller. We have the index action, we have the create action. So inside the create action, what we are doing, we are creating a new message with the said params, the whitelisted params, maybe content is the only param, and then we respond to the turbo stream format. So this is how we write turbo stream inside our controller. Turbo streams go inside our controller because we want them to be run once an action is executed. Once we hit an action, that's when we want to execute the stream as well. So in this case, when the message is created and is maybe the transaction is committed to a database, we render the turbo stream. Now, what is turbo stream means? We turbo stream.append to the messages DOM ID in our HTML, and then the partial we want to change is the message partial. This part of the page has been cut, but what the partial we want to change is the message partial in the messages view. Okay. In Rails, we work with partials. Partials they are reusable views that you can use maybe when rendering something you want to render multiple times. Use partials, and then the locals element there specifies the variable you want to. In this case, we are rendering the message, the local variable message which has been created in the first line of the create action. So that is what we want to re-render inside the partial. Okay. So basically, that is how we put the turbo stream in our controller. Turbo stream goes into our controller because that is the controller controls how the server, as in the controller controls the web, how we send data and whatnot. So this is the message partial of the messages view that you want to re-render each time you create a new message. So inside we see the message, the content of the message that you want to re-render on each successful commit to a database. And then the second line, we have the index view, that is all our messages. So the view inside the messages view, we are using the same partial. Remember, we are talking about partial and them being reusable. In this case, we are rendering the same partial to render the collection of messages. So the index view will render all messages from that using the partial, the message partial. Okay. Okay. We look back at how our turbo stream looks like. Now from that, the controller, the committing the message to the database. Now this is what we have as the HTML, the generated HTML. This is how it looks like on the server side. So we have a turbo stream. The action is append. The target is the messages. we are targeting the DOM ID, an element with the DOM ID messages. The template is the content of the message. So this is what our table stream looks like on the server side. When a message is created, it is added to the collection of messages, and the message partial re-rendered with a newly added message appended to the list. Okay, so we have action cable. Action cable is a Rails technology. What action cable does? Okay, so basically, in a web page, we have the client side and the server side. The client side on the server side, basically, without using action cable, we use HTTP as our protocol of choice. But with action cable, what action cable does? Action cable upgrades our connection from the client to the server now to use WebSockets. What WebSockets? Explaining WebSockets. WebSockets are maybe open. WebSockets open a two-way communication between the client and the server, such that the client side and the server side, that connection remains open for maybe updates and new, as in it remains open such that the client side gets the data that is live on the server. When any change happens on the server, it is reflected on the client side. That is what action cable does through WebSockets. So action cable seamlessly integrates WebSockets which in turn creates a two-way communication between the client and the server. Turbo Rails contains a JavaScript custom element which encapsulates the logic of creating this connection. Okay, on the client, an action cable connection and subscription is established using this line. This is a helper method that comes with now the integration of action cable with TurboStream. Action cable actually has a helper method called stream from, which now when you put a string, now the user on the client side is subscribed to this maybe you can call it a channel. When on the action cable side, without even integrating the TurboStream, we have a helper method which is stream from, without now the turbo part. What this enables us to do is it keeps a channel open such that information from the server is rendered live, real-time updates and whatnot, such that now the client sees what is live on the server side. Now integrating action cable with Turbo, we have this method that in turn creates a channel for us to see, which creates that two-way communication which remains open, such that information from the server is rendered as it is live on the client side. Okay, this method, the TurboStream from helper method, generates this element, this HTML element, which has a channel attribute and a signed stream name. The channel attribute is a string with a channel as its name, and then the signed stream name is a base 64 encoded string that because of that encrypts our information. This is what is generated from using the TurboStream method. The stream method generates this HTML element which establishes the subscription now to the channel, so that you can get our data live from the server side to the client side. So I have a snippet here. I don't know if you can see. The first line there after the comment says TurboStream from courses. So what this does is it creates that connection open, and then when using WebSockets, you can have two tabs open on a machine, and when an update is done on one tab, on one side or on one device, it happens automatically on the other device without requiring you to refresh the page. That is the functionality of WebSockets. That is how it enables now the real-time update of the page. When a TurboStream update is sent from the server, The client-side code that is subscribed to the channel specified by the turbo stream from will receive the update and use it to update the appropriate part of the page. When anything happens of the server, that 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 line there, it creates now the channel to get the information live from the server side to the client side, that ensuring that you don't have to reload the page, but you will get the data. Opening one tab on this device and another tab on this device, updating data on this tab on device A you'll automatically see the data on the other device B, because of the functionality that is WebSockets. In other words, TurboStream from course is just telling the client side that it should expect to receive TurboStream updates from the courses channel. Okay, we have another code snippet here. We have a class maybe called course. This is from maybe a platform which is a educational platform. I want us to see under the comment tagged TurboStream and action cable. We have the first line there. After create commit, we are telling the object, or rather the code is saying that we should append to the courses channel, updating, re-rendering the course partial in the courses view, and using the object that is being re-rendered, the self now, the receiver of the method, as the object to use in the local as our variable of choice. And the target in this case is the DOM ID courses. The DOM ID courses is the channel that we have opened in the previous slide. Now what we want to do in this case, we want to after create commit means that when an object is created and that transaction is saved in our DB, when that transaction is successfully saved in our database, we want to update the courses DOM ID, the DOM ID courses with the courses partial, and okay, the target and the broadcast append to, they point to the same DOM ID. So we want to append our course into that ID, DOM ID. Okay. The second one, after create commit broadcast replace to, we are targeting the same DOM ID after a successful update of our object in our DB. And the last one, they is saying that we want to manipulate the same DOM ID courses when we destroy an object. After destroy commit means after a record is destroyed or deleted and the transaction is successful, we want to manipulate the same DOM ID by removing the element that has been deleted. Okay, the broadcast methods are used to send messages to specific channel. In this case, we were sending it to the courses channel. The DOM ID courses. The message sent to the channel include a template and a local variable. A template is maybe the partial that we are re-rendering. In this case, we are re-rendering the course partial inside the courses view, and the variable that we are using in maybe the first instance when we created the course after the create commit was the individual object that was successfully saved. We were calling self. We were calling self in this case. Self is the receiver of that method, the object that has been saved to the DB. That is what we want to use as our variable in that specific instance. And maybe in the other two lines, the partial and the locals have been omitted, but the same partial and the same locals apply to the update commit and the destroy commit as well. What happens in the create action, the create commit happens for the update, and maybe for the destroy commit we don't need to re-render the partial since we are removing an object. And if it's successfully removed, we just update the DOM ID without that element. That is what we are saying. So yeah, that is all. If you want additional resources on, maybe you can look at this YouTube channel. It has content from maybe the past year's Rails conference. You can look at the listed items. I believe they will help you in your further understanding of Hotwire. And generally learning Rails. Okay, in my conclusion, Hotwire is built by the team at Base Camp. It's a group called 37 Signals, and by their research or their hypothesis, they say that they claim that 80% of their client interactivity of their web application is managed by Hotwire, and I'd guess that at least the half of their client side has maybe some styling and whatnot. So looking at your application through this lens will help you reduce much complexity, since you don't have to use JavaScript on the front end anymore. With Hotwire you are sorted for interactivity and maybe even live page updates. Hotwire works particularly well with real conventional partials views. As we have seen, we can re-render the same partial for the first view and maybe later views. So it works well with maybe the Rails convention of maybe partials. Yeah, it okay. So you will have to, the hassle is minimal in general. Ideally, you're using Rails code that you have already written, but accessing it in new ways to provide client-side interactions. Okay, that's all. I hope you have learned something new and maybe understood what Hotwire is in a better dimension. Okay, that's what I had for you today. Okay, any questions? Any questions?
I think the software now, so some of the things that you say, um, we have now what you normally have in the
Yeah.
now we have like smaller
Yeah.
and able to change without changing the code or making it
Yeah.
faster. Right?
Yeah.
That's a new.
Yeah. With Hotwire, I don't think you need React. Yeah, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah.
So another question.
Okay.
So I want to talk about the terms of friends. We're talking about the EID5.
Yeah.
I have like multiple type of friends.
Yeah.
So they could do like so personally, like how we do like distinguish them. Because I think your first mentioned that you can use IDs, string.
Yeah.
So like in like how would it look like syntax of
Okay. Okay, I think I get what you mean with the naming and everything. Okay, so in one file we can have as many frames as possible. We can wrap anything small. We can wrap inside a frame. Any link, any form submission, we can wrap inside a frame. Now remember, I said that the frames or turbo frames works by the sending side and the receiving side agreeing on names. So in this case, meaning that you can use as many names and as many IDs, as many local variables as your names, as many active record objects, as long as they agree on the sending side and the receiving side. You can have as many, names don't look alike. We can have product 1, product 2, product 3, edit link, edit new. You see, you can have the frame, the edit link wrapped in a frame. Maybe in this case, we can use a string in this case. Maybe call the first one. You can call it edit to do, and then in the edit page you can call the same the frame edit to do, and then maybe in the index page you can have the new to do, and then in the new view we can have new to do the instance variable, which is the instance variable, maybe to do, which is instantiated when we call to do the class object, or we call new on the class object, creating the instance variable. You get? As in, as long as the names don't look alike, we can have as many as possible. And remember, you have to agree. The sending side and the receiving side must agree on the name. If in a case where you have the sending side with a name and this the receiving side without the name, that will cause an error obviously because we don't know where to put our content. You see, so in that case, you have to agree on names. You can use strings. You can use maybe objects. Object in this case, I'm referring to active record objects. Yeah, you can use the instance variable as in this case. Yeah.
And the last question.
Okay.
What advice would you give somebody who is studying things? You advise a person like to actually then he arranges how to make a story. He arranges like idea for where I'm at. And the right way to do it. Then after I'm really then just like
Okay, my view is different obviously, but what I'll suggest if you want to get into Ruby on Rails, okay, I find it useful to first know Ruby, the language. First, understand how the language works, maybe to some extent before you work with the framework, because it helps. Because Rails is written in Ruby, so if you understand how Ruby works or what Ruby is, getting into the framework, you will sort of know how things connect. You get, and then getting into Rails, okay, you use the journey is long. Hakuna watu wengi hatujafika mwisho, but all you need to know or all you need to see is your next step. So you need to know what am I adding my value to myself in. Okay, Hotwire is okay. It's nice to work with because it releases a lot of maybe the client side and everything. The maybe creating the API and the other side maybe using React. You don't have to do all that now, but maybe with time, if you understand the framework, now you can start maybe using Hotwire, maybe get into Action Cable, moving forward. It's pole pole too. You just need to know what to do next. Any question? Any other question?
For what do you call it?
Yeah, Action Cable.
Action cable. So you say that you keep like open channel.
A two-way open channel between the client side and the server side.
So I don't know for people who are here are very good React. Does that happen?
I've not worked with React, Evo.
I'm just asking you because I feel that back in the day, because whenever something changes, the back end,
Yeah.
that should reflect as well on the front end.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that is there. So for guys who are using there.
Maybe you get an answer there. Yeah. Okay.
I guess I guess a lot of people will use it and can for instance, as I said, guys, maybe happy session. Maybe happy session the case get the way. So I think that
Okay. WebSockets in general, it's an interesting technology, how everything connects and how Action Cable maybe does everything. It's something interesting. It has maybe connection, publish. You have the publishing side, the subscribing side. You have the connection, the publisher, the subscriber. It's something interesting. You can look at it in maybe the Rails documentation. It's something interesting maybe to learn and work with. Yeah.
now that brings me to my other question. So in terms of speed, you have so many people subscribed to so many I would say so many people who are using that
Yeah.
If so many people are subscribed, that means that every time something changes, uh, the backend will have to send
Yeah.
a updated version of the data.
Yeah, we are sending, but okay.
How will that affect now how I would say the speed or the resources to the backend? So because you have to keep doing that over and over. Right? That is my thinking. Have to keep doing that over and over. As opposed to somebody, if you have, let's say we have 1,000 people, all in our page. The only time that changes the page, for example, send API and adjacent API, it only changes when you refresh. And I would guess not everybody refreshing at the same time. But now this one right? So every time you change it, all of them are sort of refreshing.
Yeah. Okay, it has some effect, but this time the effect is more on the server side than the client side. Remember, on the client side, we are not refreshing the page, we are not reloading, but we are getting data as is on the server. The effect is more on the server side, more on the client side. So I don't know, maybe how maybe the resource there is the how we should be managing our resources in this case on the server side, but on the client side, minimal to maybe no resource consumption.
Maybe find a way, concept of caching, right?
Yeah, caching. Yeah.
Caching refers to this like if a client has a request, if maybe you find a way that stores it in their side, like how to caching, then if you update the page, it just goes to the local domain. It goes to the real domain. But I guess in this aspect, you need to go to the backend. So maybe you can put something like a juggling between updating and then user program. So maybe you wait after they update, or maybe you make an update with one. After they are fully done, maybe submit that to you a request and then comes down with the updated data. But since they are also they are open, it's if you take listening to like a really correct, right? So, I mean, there's a drawback to it, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes both ways, I'd say.
All the requests are being processed in the so it's not like
Yeah.
there's a heavy load. So depending on the resources, all the requests will be queued.
Yeah, action
They are
cable.
processed at the same time.
Yeah, it uses Redis to hold the maybe that memory. Yeah, to now process them in queues. So yeah. Any other question? Okay, if there's no further question, okay, I'd finished it at that, and thank you all for listening.
Okay, thanks, Alvin. So you really did a good job because this is his first talk, right?
Yeah.
You remember that I talked before, and I feel like it's a bunch of people also. And that's why I was saying when because we were looking for speakers for events, more events in the future. So if you feel like you can share, and also when you share, it's just to learn or ask questions people should do, so you get to learn and grow as well. So that's interesting. Um, so, so maybe the next thing I want to talk about is if you have social media, so Twitter, um, Instagram, but Twitter specifically for today, we're going to get one person to have present. I won't say where it is right now. So, So just tweet about the event with the hashtag Nairuby KE. Maybe we get the connection fast. Nairuby KE. We just trying to also take yeah. So I will have if it's 100, maybe Nairobi KE, right? Yeah. Nairobi KE. So I written Nairobi there, but it would be Nairobi KE. Like that Nairobi KE. So
KE is capital.
oh, I think it's capital.
K and E is also capital.
What?
The last KE.
But
Yeah.
can just yes. What did you ask? Is it just related to Ruby or electronics? Wait, I'm saying, is it related to just Ruby? Representation. Yeah. As in, okay, so it's not like Ruby Ruby. Okay, if you would love it, it's about Ruby, but if it's anything that the community can be benefit from, like a good community, I think talking about other things that you can use to Ruby or any other tech that you would think that are integrated. It doesn't have to be Ruby. Right? So I don't know. I'm not sure you can respond to that.
It has to be something has to relate to Ruby. So like yeah, implementation on something which like creates backend, or maybe it can be a plug, like a library for Java or maybe for Ruby or something like that. So it has to touch. Yes, yes, because the whole majority of the people here.
So it can be any technology that we would think I will be there. So as a designer, yeah.
That's why how do I so you're a full stack engineer. So that means full stack designer.
So I do the UX, UI, all those, and translate the designs into something that now the backend developers.
Okay, so if you do the CSS, HTML, all that, yeah.
So basically, what is the front end framework, what are the website, just the related why can I create assist? Because one of the key or to really give a backend developer something that they put in project. And so that's what as a case.
Um, so how you can benefit is maybe networking, connecting with different people, because here we also have people who are entrepreneurs, there are people who are working on like their own projects. So there might be something collaboration. We also have like open source projects, and we need designers. And also, as much as you are a designer, maybe you might want to learn a bit about Ruby and backend development. Yeah, so it's a community with all sorts of people, entrepreneurs, designers, programmers. Yeah, so there's always something to learn. Actually,
You wanted to give a talk. Oh, okay.
yeah, but also you can also give a talk, because we have people who are full stack, like I'm a full stack software engineer. So I like to learn more about